Good morning, good afternoon, good evening all, it's Bear here. And I'd like to welcome you to my YouTube channel, A Box with No Lid, a channel I'm creating not just to bring the awareness around the lived reality trauma and complex trauma creates and removal and adoption trauma, but I also want to bring what I've learned not only just through my own personal experiences, but my many years as an advocate and as a practitioner in these areas. Now, yes, this is the next video in the adoption series, and I still want to continue forward around the importance of awareness around our narrative and the survival state around what is created when you remove a child. That developmental survival response or trauma response that all children who were removed pre-verbal have, regardless of whether it's for foster care or adoption. In the last video, I put forward about asking the question of what changed. And in this video, I want to start to explain it, hopefully in a little bit of a clearer way, and just focus on that one component. Now, as I said in the last video or in several videos, when we were developing in our mother's womb, there's everything she experiences crosses the placenta. We hear her voice. We know her pheromones, her scent. We know her genetics because they are part of our development. They're part of our genetics. We know that there's a significant male, our father, presumably, a male she is around. We hear his voice in the womb. And we feel what our mother's connection to him is and her responses to him. We know if our mother feels unsafe and all that crosses the placenta. There is so much research around this and it's not hard to find. Everything our mother experiences crosses the placenta is our experience, and we develop from that base. Now, when you are looking at a child growing inside a woman that is relinquishing for adoption, or you're conceived through, putting it bluntly, rape, which is more common than people like to hear, especially in countries like America, where they ban the termination of a rape pregnancy. They force a woman to carry the term. And I know adoptees that have come from that. When you are growing and developing in your mother's womb and she doesn't want to connect to you, that crosses the placenta. Her anxiety, her fear, her, the arguments, the toing and froing that she has crosses the placenta. And it increases the importance. Or if she lives in such a threatful environment, or she knows you're going to get taken from her, the same thought, she feels unsafe. That crosses the placenta. That puts us in developing in a heightened state. So that heightens for the first layer. That heightens this entire process, this developmental response. When we are born, being mammals, we are biologically designed that the next steps we have in the pre-verbal stage, we connect through, we recognize the vocal tone because it's crossed the placenta. We've heard it. We've developed hearing it. Mother's pheromones, same genetics. We connect through all these connections. Her nervous system, our nervous system have developed side by side. We are designed to learn, our nervous system is designed to connect to her nervous system, to co-regulate, to help our nervous system develop how to process, interact with all the physical components of living. The pre-verbal stage of life, of development, is all around that connection, of co-regulating off our mother's and father's nervous systems, to develop the ability to sense, interact, and connect with and assess our environment from a felt sense perspective. We're designed, the cognitive components, the higher brain functions don't develop and don't really start to kick in until post 12 months of age. Once we move from pre-verbal to verbal interaction, that bridge, that time of a child or an infant's development is where the way we view the environment starts to change. But in the beginning, it's an immersion experience. We develop touch sensations, heat, cold, all textures, all this kind of stuff. We develop safe and belonging through physical connection. A baby, an infant cries in the cot. You pick them up, you hold them, they stop crying because of that co-regulation, that connection, that safe, that belonging. Unless they're a stranger picking you up. If it's your mother picking you up and you're used to that, All of that stuff, if we keep that understanding at that level of the first pre-verbal, it's all around experiencing, developing the ability to experience, to connect, and to be part of, to be able to feel and actually engage and participate in our environment from a neurosensory or neurophysiological process. Post that verbal stage, cognitive brain, we start to separate, we start to look, we learn, we start to develop all those interaction steps. When you remove a child or a child is relinquished to be placed in adoption or foster care, the verbal part of assessing, of having to negotiate, of having to interpret and learn how to be part of, how to interact, now has to come on before all the sensory stuff is developed. We are forcing the skipping of a hugely developmental step because of the simple necessity that if an infant is placed with non-biological family, they have to develop a connection to that non-biological family. All the natural mechanisms are no longer present because there are different genetics. They're not biologically the same. So it's a learned process. So we're forcing a verbal structure on a pre-verbal infant. And that changes things. Yes, we are altering the way we're supposed to develop in how we connect, how to immerse ourselves and be part of, without a cognitive component interfering. So we create this extra filter, this extra process, or a more dominant process if you want to look at it from another angle. Our cognitive ability of assessing our environment becomes the first step rather than the immersion. And then how our cognitive process develops on how we can immerse, giving our nervous system the permissions and the way to interpret the feelings and physicality of sensation, is defined by what happens and how successful that is within the early years of the adoption or the long-term placement. But that physical difference, that neurophysiological difference of bypassing a developmental step will always be there. And I've raised this countless times, even with adoptees, and most go, we can't change it. You move past it, it doesn't affect me. You don't know what you're talking about. Until it does affect them. Until their relationships fail. Until things fall down. And it gets to the point where the fog collapses, and it does affect, and the questions are then asked. I've also gained this understanding because in my many, many years of being an advocate around this stuff, I've also spoken to countless adoptees' kids, to their partners, both actively in a relationship and after the relationship has fallen down. And I've asked the questions and where they've been open to share, to understand why and what is actually going on in these inner workings, getting past the rationalizations and justifications and all the labels, and actually getting into, the nitty-gritty of it all to understand what it actually is. And I firmly do believe that because we've removed a pre-verbal step and forced a verbal step in, has caused the basis of this to develop. Because I have yet to meet children of adoptees that don't feel this gap of connection to their parents. And the amount of partners that they get to a point where they go, I've just felt so separate because there's a part of them I can't connect to. And that ended our relationship. I've heard that so many times, and that's why I'm trying to make these videos. Through awareness, we can learn to heal it. It is very difficult to heal because we need to be able to learn how to immerse ourselves in physical sensation without the cognitive brain being present. And to do that takes absolute trust. That absolute trust that a newborn infant has with their mom and dad that they've connected to biologically, because all the markers are met. There is no assessment there. It is just this natural process. We need to find ways to, as adults, work with this stuff. And there are ways, there are modalities that can. I will never put these modalities or speak or name them out on an open platform such as this, because the way our society abuses this, I will never put a person in a position thinking, well, I think this is, I'm going to pursue this and inquire about this, and getting into a position of a great deal of harm, because these involve absolute trust and they involve absolute physical immersion in the experiences, all the touchy-feely stuff. That is up to an individual to find out and work out for themselves, or if I'm having a conversation one-on-one and I feel is appropriate and their awareness of the pitfalls and risks is present enough, I will one-on-one mention that. But I will never put it out on an open channel such as this. But there are ways that can work with this. But this video, the main thing I want to get across is its existence and the reasons why it is there. And for decades, I have advocated this and brought it up within many different spheres in government and therapeutic and so forth, so forth. And people just don't want to accept it. But I believe it is a simple truth. The reason we have this barrier between us and those who haven't gone through this experience is that simple. We were forced to bypass our neurological pre-verbal immersion in learning how to engage, connect, and assess and be part of our environment. And that safe environment of family and belonging with all the biological markers present. And we were forced to learn a verbal state too early. Take this information how you choose. But please understand that I've spent decades trying to find a way for it not to be this, because I know and I am aware of how difficult this is to work with and what is required to heal this. So I've tried to be the devil's advocate to myself for decades, and I've always ended up back at this spot. Please understand my intent for making this video and the awareness I'm trying to put out there. I love you guys' comments and feedback. Please be mindful, please be safe, and I'll see you all next time. Hope.